I'm Jay Besega, and you're listening to Bad Deals. Welcome to Bad Deals, the only real estate horror podcast on the air. I'm Jay Besega, your host, bringing you war stories from the top warriors in the real estate game today, all with crucial lessons in the end. Because in real estate, the worst deals often teach the most valuable lessons. Let's get started. Welcome to the Bad Deals podcast, where we show that real estate is not all sunshine and hockey stick growth. Building a great real estate business often involves trials, challenges, and yes, bad deals. Welcome, and thank you so much for listening to the inaugural episode of Bad Deals. I am your host, Jay Besega, and today I'm going to be telling you about the one and only house flip deal that I've ever done. Now, not everybody listening to this knows my background, but a few years ago, I decided, for the sake of my future and my family's future, to start investing in real estate. So what I did was, with almost no knowledge, I bought 6 units in my first year. I took the money that I had and I plowed it straight into single-family deals. Now, nowadays, I don't do very many single-family deals. I'm mostly focused on multifamily deals. I syndicate apartment deals, and I provide great returns for investors. But back then, I was doing everything myself. It was Jay's real estate business, where he does everything himself with his own money and his own expertise, and he doesn't partner with anybody. That was my MO. So today we're just going to talk about what was involved with my one and only flip deal, a deal that I did specifically so I could find out how a single-family rehab went. It involves a nightmare scenario with the floor. It involves a cannabis plant that I did not grow, and I'm really excited to tell you about it. So for the starting point of this story, we are going to go back to the end of 2021, right at the end of my 1 year doing only single-family deals. I decided to close on this flip. I bought it from a wholesaler. This story is really not about the wholesaler, and the moral of the story is not don't buy from wholesalers. Wholesalers are great. Wholesalers can provide you some really, really great deals. It's just that you have to know how to properly vet and inspect those deals if you're going to be the one to go in and flip it or burr it or otherwise operate it. That's on you. The onus is on you to check it out. Foreshadowing, I didn't do that. So I went in. There was sort of a high-pressure closing on this house that was just under $100,000. Little ranch, little 2-bed or 3-bed, I guess, 1-bath ranch. And I decided, okay, I can just flip this. The ARV looks good. This looks like we can make a little bit of change and as well learn about how to rehab a house. So I closed on the house after seeing it one time and not really doing much due diligence, not bringing an inspector, not bringing my contractor around till after I closed, and just kind of almost doing back of the napkin scope of work for the contractor. I mean, I went through and I itemized each thing I wanted to be done, but really, I didn't completely know what I was looking at. So when I went to talk to the contractor about, hey, this is what I want to be done, I want this scope of work, and I want it done in this timeline. He went and looked at the house, and this is really where the first red flag comes in. He called me and said, "Okay, hey Jay, I got a little something I need to talk to you about." I said, "Okay, what is it?" He said, "The floor doesn't work." I said, "What do you mean the floor does not work?" He said, "The floor is broken." And I thought back to that first time I went in the house, how walking over the floorboards, it kind of felt a little bouncy, not quite as sturdy. I just figured this is how they built them back then, back in the 60s, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and I'm really showing my age here. The floor did not work. He was right. All the joists were broken. For those of you who don't know how houses or floors work, it's not that complicated. You have some joists that are sitting sideways, and then you have subfloor and then flooring on top of that. So all of these joists are really what bears the brunt of people walking on them, furniture, really anything that you do on a floor, the joists are really, really important to the stability of that floor. So come to find out, yeah, most of the floor joists are broken. Okay, so the follow-up question there is, why are all the floor joists broken? Well, now we come to thing number 2 that I neglected to work out in my poor due diligence of this house. If you go around the back of this house, you will notice that not only is there a slope running away from the house, but there's a crawl space that opens on the same side of the house. Now, I'm not going to draw it, but you can maybe picture what happens when you have a slope running up that leads down to a crawl space opening. Whenever it rains, and it rains pretty often, it's Middle Tennessee, it rains a lot. Whenever it rains, all that water is going to flow directly into that crawl space. Crawl space barely even had a door on it. So water was just pouring into the crawl space, and it resulted in just so much rot, just all of the rot. And it was almost difficult for the contractor to work on, because every time it rained, water would just keep sloshing down in there, and it made it impossible to work on. So we had to do a complete crawl space remediation. So that's really things 1 and 2. We had to replace all the floor joists, and we had to remediate the crawl space. I did not put that on my budget because I didn't know about it, because I hadn't done my work that I needed to do up front, the due diligence piece. So there's a detail I've kind of left out in just talking about what was wrong with the house. The house wasn't the only problem in this deal. And again, everything here is my fault. I'm not blaming anybody for this but me. Buck stops here. I am the person who bought it. I'm the person who went out and got financing for it. I put together the scope of work. This is my, I did this. So the other thing that I neglected to mention was not only the house was a problem, but the timeline was a problem. So for people who aren't house flippers, the time you want to be from the start of the deal to the end of the deal when you sell it, you're really looking at 6 to 9 months tops. It's better if you can get it lower, 3 months. That's a great turnaround time. A year is really pushing. You don't want to be going a year, because oftentimes you're either buying this completely with cash, so all of your cash is locked up in this deal, or you got short-term financing on it. You got a hard money loan, which I did. I had a loan that covered a lot of the purchase price and a lot of the construction price as well. So it was a loan-to-cost ratio loan. It was a hard money loan. So ideally, when you go into a deal like this, what you want to do is immediately, any deal actually, let's not just talk about flips here. This is for any deal that you want to get into. You want to hit the ground running day one. If at all possible, you want to start executing right away. That should be your goal. I didn't do that. I sat around for 2 months because the tenant needed to find a place to live. His lease wasn't up until 2 months after close, and I said, okay, it's fine. It's a simple rehab. We'll be able to get it done within the 6 to 9 months I've planned for. Well, the spoiler alert there is that it did take longer than I thought, not only because of the broken floor joists and the crawl space remediation, but now we're 2 months behind where we should be, and we really needed that extra 2 months to try to get this stuff done. So what this all adds up to, this all being not doing due diligence, not starting on time, not getting resources together on time, that just ended up in me going over time and over budget. And when you hear about flips, you hear about rehabs, a lot of times, especially if you're an inexperienced operator, you will go over time and over budget. But in this case, it was bad because of the real big last problem that I faced in this deal, a turning market. So for those of you who weren't around the past couple years, or weren't a real estate investor, didn't care about real estate the past couple years, we had historically low interest rates that turned into not historically high interest rates, but a huge jump in interest rates in order to try and slow the pace of inflation. That was something that the Federal Reserve did. Chairman, our boy Jerome Powell, went in and said, we got to slow down this inflation. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put a lid on this by jacking up interest rates. And jacking up interest rates, because of the elasticity there, it will make housing prices level off a little. So we were in the very, very early stages of this around summer 2022, which is when I wanted to sell this house. Now, at this point in the story, I really just want to sell this house. I want to be done with this. Thank you very much. I've learned so much on this flip deal. I don't ever want to do a flip again. Now I can tell all my investors to not do flips. This is great. Let's just get it sold. But because of those rising interest rates, the market was starting to little bit of a squeeze. You saw houses that were on the market for a little bit longer. You got more days on market. That means the market's not as hot. And we were starting to see that cooling effect in Clarksville. This was in Clarksville, Tennessee. So it was still Middle Tennessee, but not quite to the Nashville metro where it's super just blazing hot all the time, regardless of when it is. So seeing this impending cooling and knowing that time is really of the essence here, I decided to do a 180 from the beginning of the deal where I just kind of sat on my hands and said, no, it'll be fine. Everything will be cool. I actually was willing to give up more commission to any real estate agent, any buyer's agent that would help me get this under contract. And my seller side agent is he's just the best guy. I would recommend him to anybody who's in the Nashville area. His name is Miller Evans. Go look him up. He's awesome, dude. He said, you know what? I know you're trying to get this done fast. I'm going to cut my commission a little bit, and then we can both kind of contribute towards this. Just give an extra percentage point to whatever buyer's agent can get this locked down by Friday. I said, that's a fantastic idea. Let's actually move on this. Let's not sit on our hands anymore. So we did. We put that in the listing, said, hey, in the agent notes, by the way, if you get this locked up by Friday, you got an extra commission point on it. And it was locked up by Friday. That we had 2 or 3 offers on the table within the first couple days. It was really fantastic. And that's one of the learning lessons, not from the failure of the deal, but from how I got out of this failure of a deal is pay your people well. Don't be afraid. Don't get greedy. Don't be afraid sometimes if you have to give up a little bit of money to save a deal, to make a deal work once you're already in it. It's the reality of doing this actively that you just have to take responsibility for that. So there's one thing that I teased before. I kind of buried the lead a little bit, and I haven't mentioned it yet, and that's the weed that I didn't grow. So the last time I visited this property, getting to the end of the story where we're exiting and just getting the heck out of this deal after wasting a ton of time and money on it, the last time I visited the property was because my agent texted me one day with a picture. He said, hey, is this yours? And I looked on my phone, and the picture is of this teeny tiny little cannabis plant. Or it could have been a hemp plant. I don't know. It wasn't flowering. I have no idea. I'm not a weed scientist. But it was there, and it was right next to the driveway. So I said, okay, well, we're going to need to show this, aren't we? So I immediately drove up there, found out that in the state of Tennessee, having a flowering cannabis plant, or maybe just a cannabis plant in general, can land you up to 5 years in prison. So I bagged that thing up in a Home Depot bag, and I just tossed it in the garbage and never looked back. That was the last time I visited the property. My agent took care of a lot of things. That's really a big learning lesson from this is, again, find the right people, find the right agent that's willing to take care of what needs to be taken care of and has the market knowledge to actually get that done. So finally, we've reached the end of our first bad deal. We've reached the end of this flip that I shouldn't have done in the first place and made tons of mistakes in. So we went over time, over budget, and we eventually sold it because we gave up a little extra commission to the buyer's agent. So what was the result? Well, I actually didn't lose a ton of money on this. And that is not because I did something right. That is just a consequence of the market. So the market was starting to cool. I mentioned that, but the market had still gone up enough that I was running on market fumes. So that's why I didn't lose a ton of money. I think I ended up almost breaking even. And I was looking at a $30,000 or $40,000 payday at the end of this. I got basically none of that. I wasn't quite in the hole. I was able to make it out, pay off any debt that I had, pay off any credit cards that I had taken out, but it was not worth the time I put into it. Certainly was not a cash cow, did not make me the kind of money that I ever like to see on a real estate deal. So I want to come back and recap really what the big lessons that I got from this deal and what you can take away into your own real estate business. But first, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor. Oh, hello there. I didn't see you. I was just enjoying a nice Earl Grey. You might think there's whiskey in that glass, but not everything in our world is as it seems. For instance, real estate gurus would have you believe that the best way to protect and grow your wealth through real estate is to get out there, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and start buying houses. Preferably from them. Sure, that could work fine for some people. But if you're a high earner, chances are there are things you want to do with your time outside of work. Things like playing golf, having romantic dinners with your spouse, playing with your children, exercising, and cracking open a cold one with the boys. And the fact is, you can get the benefits of real estate investing without having to deal with tenants, toilets, or bad deals. The key, though, is mitigating your risk by doing it the right way. I want to show you the right way, and that's why I just wrote a book, The Minimalist Guide to Multifamily Investing. I could sell this on Amazon. Actually, I am selling this on Amazon. But I think it'd be more fun to just give it to you for free. And you can get it for free today by going to minimalistmultifamilybook.com. That's minimalistmultifamilybook.com. Quit drinking the fake stuff sold to you by the gurus and reach for the real stuff. Cheers. And we are back. So a really common theme in all of these bad deals, everything we're going to talk about this season and on this show is that every bad deal has lessons. I don't think I've run into any bad deal or any catastrophe or huge challenge in a deal that didn't have lessons to come out of it that could be used for future deals or for future investments. So we're just going to quickly recap what the big lessons were from this bad flip deal. Lesson number 1 is do not neglect due diligence. If I had not neglected due diligence, there's a very good chance I would not have even gotten into this deal in the first place because I would have known that all of my headroom that I had been budgeting for was not as big as I thought. I wasn't going to get that 70%. That's the rule of thumb that you want to see, 70% of after repair value. That didn't work when I factored in all of the extra stuff that I was going to have to do, all the crawl space remediation, all the floor fixing, the new subfloor I had to buy on top of that to put on the new floor joists. And that could have all been very easily avoided if I had just done my due diligence. Lesson number 2, do not drag your feet in a real estate deal. That's the only way I could describe it, is dragging my feet. I dragged my feet for 2 months, and I went into a deal knowing that I was going to have to drag my feet for 2 months, and I still did it. If at all possible, you really want to be hitting the ground running when you buy anything or you get into any kind of deal at all. And that goes for deals that you're investing in passively too. If you talk to an operator and they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to close on this, we're not really going to start work until the next quarter, I wouldn't just, I'm not saying run away screaming. I'm saying you might want to ask them a few more questions about why they're doing that and how they're going to mitigate the risk there. And finally, lesson number 3 is trust the right people and always be willing to pay the right people. Don't be cheap. Don't be greedy. If I had not relied on the right people and paid the right people in this situation, I might have not come out with just a bunch of lost time, a bunch of lost opportunity cost, and sort of breaking even on this deal. I might have not come out of this deal at all. But trusting the right people and paying the right people enabled me to get to that point where I can walk away and say, okay, this will be a really good story to tell on a podcast one day. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this first inaugural episode of the Bad Deals podcast. I'm so excited for what we got coming up. If you like this show, we are a very new show. So as I'm sure you know, subscribing, leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes would be super helpful. Really excited for what's to come. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you later on the next episode of Bad Deals.
The one thing I didn't say is I talked about, the deal came to us from one of the teachers or the mastermind. Well, guess what? The GC and the architect were also recommended and sort of affiliated with them.
The hole gets deeper. The hole gets deeper.
It does.
Wow.
So let's just say that we weren't part of that mastermind for very long after that.
If you like the show you just heard, you can actually help us out a lot by following, subscribing, and leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app.